Today we're going to finish up the brake upgrade on the Tundra by vacuum bleeding the brake lines, properly breaking in the rotors and brake pads, and getting this beast back on the road. Coming up. Yeah! My name's Drew, and this is Evergreen Overland. On this channel, we do reviews on camping and overland gear, we hone our outdoor cooking skills and techniques, and we showcase 4x4 and off-road vehicle modifications like the one we're doing today. Before I go any further, I want to put this out there as a public service announcement. This video is intended for strictly entertainment purposes. I'm doing this just to show you the process that I went through and the decisions I made to do this upgrade. Please do the research and make the judgment call for yourself if this type of a job is within your capabilities. You're dealing with the braking system of your vehicle. That's a life or death situation if that thing fails, so make sure you're comfortable if you move forward and do any of this for yourself. Last week we took a look at removing all the rusted old brake parts off of my Tundra and upgrading the whole system with a Lexus GX460 almost bolt-on modification. I decided to break the video up into two parts, so today's part we are going to go through my first attempt at vacuum bleeding brake lines. If this works out properly, it will be really nice to not have to have someone sitting in the driver's seat pumping the brakes hundreds and hundreds of times, hoping that you're getting all the air out of the system, followed by going over and performing the proper break-in procedures for your rotors and your brake pads. You really need to be breaking those in properly, kind of conditioning them a little bit. I'll explain that a little bit later in the video. It'll help with the longevity of your braking system, and it will help with preventing your rotors from warping. Take a look with where we are so far with the Lexus parts bolted on. You can see it right there. I got all my components from R1 Concepts, and I sent the Lexus GX460 calipers off to a buddy's machine shop where he machined 5/32 off the back side of this where it mounts up. That is literally the only modification you need to do to this. Otherwise, it's just a bolt-on system. And we also went through and replaced the standard original rubber brake lines with the new stainless steel braided brake lines in the front and in the rear. And yeah, it's just looking really, really clean. I got my spacers back on there and torqued down. I'm just really excited to get this thing finished up, bolted up, and back on the road to test out if it made a big difference to not only the firmness of the brake pedal, but God willing, got rid of the brake shutter on easy braking. So this kit is pretty straightforward. It comes with a bottle that acts as a reservoir, so it will basically sit in here full of your brake fluid, making sure that your reservoir up here never goes dry, because if it goes dry, that allows air to get into the system, and that's what we're trying to get out. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this top. Have some good quality shop towels around. You just don't want this stuff going everywhere. It's real caustic. If it gets on your paint, it will wear it away, and nobody really wants that. So, okay, so you take your little screen out of there right here. It's a good idea to wipe down the whole area ahead of time because you don't want particles of just random crap falling in there. And I think how this works, this thread's in here, and you just want to find the right one to clip into your system. So basically how this is going to work is I'm going to fill this with fluid, open it up in line, which will allow the fluid to start flowing, and it'll fill this reservoir up. Now, it's a good idea to get a syringe or a turkey baster or something and suck out all of the old fluid out of your reservoir here that's bad. The fluid in here actually doesn't look too bad, so I think, you know, it's been topped off and all that kind of stuff. What I'm trying to do today is just get the old fluid out of the lines. I think the fluid in the lines will be a lot darker than the fluid is up here. I'm gonna go ahead and fill this guy with the .3 fluid that's made for my vehicle, and we'll get on to the next steps. So from what I understand it, the way this thing works, you hook it up to your air chuck and it pulls a vacuum through this little nipple here. And you take this nipple and you put it over the bleeder valve and you crack the bleeder valve, and then when you squeeze this, it should pull the old fluid through the system into this catch basin. And I'm basically going to pull this through until I see that any of the dirty fluid is gone, as well as air bubbles aren't coming through the system anymore. The bleeder valve in this truck is not the easiest to see. We'll probably be able to see this a little bit better when we do the forward wheels, but it is right here. And I took the little cap off of it already. If you need to, they say you could put a little bit of grease on this to get it to seal better. Just crack this. Give it a shot. You can start seeing it. am going to get a little grease on that thing. I don't know if it is losing suction, but I want to know that it's not. Just a very little bit. Well, I'm questioning how long this needs to drain. We're going to hook it up and drain it a good long time. All right, it's another day. I worked the rest of that day trying to bleed the back passenger side bleeder valve using this vacuum system that, you see them at Harbor Freight. Amazon sells cheap ones. My whole goal was to kind of use this for the first time, learn how to use it, and then show you guys in the process how you do one of these things. But honestly, so far, I'm having nothing but troubles with it. I'm just getting bubbles and bubbles and bubbles, a whole bunch of tiny bubbles. I'm not getting a full vacuum sucked on the thing, meaning like I'm not getting like a full, tube full of brake fluid coming out. It's just kind of trickling in. I thought maybe the bleeder valve was plugged or something like that. Went over to the driver's side, tried the same thing, got the same results. I'm like, okay, these are old bleeder valves. These are all old systems. Went up to the brand new front calipers and pretty much the same story. Checked this thing out, made sure my pressures of the compressor were all good within spec of where they should be. I think it's like 90 to 130 PSI. I was good there the whole time. Looking around online, I've seen some mixed reviews. Overall, the reviews on Amazon of this thing, people loved it, had really good experiences with it. And diving into forums and looking for issues that people were having using this type of a vacuum bleeder online, it was mixed reviews on what could be causing it. Everything from, the vacuum actually pulling in air from around the threads of the bleeder valve. And it's important to note that the threads are not what actually seals the brake fluid in the lines. It's actually the, the tapered mated seal. The threads actually just pin that seal so it closes off the brake line to any intrusion of air and all that kind of stuff. That could be it. People were saying put Teflon, take those out, put Teflon tape around them. I don't think that's really safe. You don't really want to do that and introduce something not necessary to your brake system. A lot of people said they had the same experience with constant air bubbles, but they just ran it anyway. A pretty long time, ran quite a bit of fluid through there and just kind of assumed that as long as their brake pedal was getting a little solid, they were good to go. I probably ran over 16 ounces of this product through it. I'm not sure what my system holds completely, but I'm probably in that category where I've bled the lines enough to where even though there's air bubbles coming through, there's probably not air bubbles in the actual line, at least on that back passenger caliper. So even though I wanted to show you guys how to use this thing and, hopefully that I would have endorsed this thing, I really don't. I mean, maybe it's doing the job. I don't really know. I haven't pressed on the pedal because the whole truck's still up and I don't really like getting into the truck while it's on jack stands. I'm being too cautious. But my next step is honestly, I'm going to throw the tires on this thing, get it down, resting on its 4 tires, and then decide if I'm going to use the brake bleeder more so, just going through the system, letting it run a good amount of time, assuming I'm getting the air bubbles out of the line, and just assume that the air bubbles that I'm seeing in the line of the vacuum bleeder are just coming around the thread holes themselves, and then I can pump the brakes and see if I'm getting decent pressure. And then I'm thinking I'm just going to go through, have my wife step on the pedal a couple of 100 times or whatever it takes, and just check it caliper by caliper, bleeder by bleeder, going, farthest away from the fill reservoir up in the engine bay, and working my way forward to see if I'm getting air bubbles the old-fashioned way by just putting the hose over the bleeder, having somebody pump the brakes, hold the brakes down, twist your bleeder cap open, and see if bubbles are coming that way. I've done that quite a few times over the years. And I was just hoping this would be a solution for doing it by yourself and doing it more efficiently, but I just don't think this is designed properly, or maybe it's because my components are old on the truck. I don't know, but it's been more frustrating than it's been something I would endorse. So like I said, next step, I'm going to throw the tires on, get them torqued down, and get this thing resting on its own suspension. Let's get started. Okay, so the truck's down on its own weight. I haven't really pressed on the pedal to see if I have any pressure on it, so I might as well do that now. I mean, after a pump, I have pressure. Now that this thing's down on the ground, I'm going to go ahead and go back through the system. Bleed with this thing, the driver's side rear. I'll do the center load sensing proportional valve. I'll work my way up to the passenger side front, and then the driver's side front. So I did some research today, and pretty much what most people are saying on on at least the Facebook groups that I trust is that those vacuum pumps are garbage. Got a whole bunch of information from quite a few people I, trust their judgment on. I think we're going to start off by gravity bleeding the brake system, and what I'm basically going to do there is I have this set up under here that I'll show you real quick with plastic bottle. I used a 1 liter plastic Aquafina bottle, drilled a hole in the cap, filled the base of it with a little bit of brake fluid going up here, and the tube on that is going straight into the bleeder valve. And I'm going to have my wife come out and pump it first. I think what gravity bleeding is basically pumping the brakes and not worrying about like holding the brake and then, opening the bleeder valve and letting the pedal go to the floor and then closing the bleeder valve and repumping the brakes. I think gravity feeding, from what I'm understanding, link it up to a bottle like this, crack the bleeder valve and pump the brakes. Guys are saying like 20, 30 times for the right rear tire, which is the farthest tire away from the reservoir up front under the hood, and just let that gravity push all of the fluid through. And then from there, I'm just going to pressure bleed it to check if there's any air in the lines, by having my wife come out, pump the brakes 3 or 4 times, hold it. I'll crack the bleeder valve, see if any air is coming out, seal up the bleeder valve, then she can release her foot and, start pumping again. And the cycle repeats itself until you feel like there's no bubbles coming out, or until you're not seeing any bubbles come out. I've done this method throughout the years. Definitely was looking for something a little bit easier, but this might just be the best way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay. That went really well. I can't thank my wife for helping me enough. My next step is honestly just to pull the truck out and take it for a quick spin. And at the same time, I'm going to do a break-in procedure on the rotors. I, again, just like using the vacuum brake bleeder kit, have never done a break-in properly on rotors. I didn't know it was really a thing until a couple of years ago, and I haven't put a new pair of rotors on a car since. So doing the research that I've done, I'm pretty dang certain that these rotors I had on there were warped. So in the research that I've done looking around online on how to properly break in your rotors and brake pads, basically the procedure is kind of matching up the surfaces of your pads to your rotors, and then also evenly distributing a nice coating of the friction material across your rotors. Now you got to do this in a safe manner, and hopefully you can do it in a space or a time of day where there's not going to be a whole lot of traffic, because you've got to avoid coming to a complete stop as much as possible during some of these procedures. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to get in the truck, make sure I have decent pedal pressure, and then from there seems to be kind of a couple different miles per hour that you bring it up to do this whole breaking in bedding process. Anywhere between like 40 to 45 is what it seems to be average. You're bringing your car up to that speed, and then you're coming down in rapid, consistent pressure to about 5 miles an hour, I think, 10 to 5 miles an hour. And you do that 4 to 6 times. You just want to avoid coming to a complete stop if you can, and maybe shifting the car into neutral or whatever you have to do to not put your brakes on full stop, so that the pads don't imprint onto the really hot rotor, causing kind of like a little raised, amount of that pad material on your rotors that can give you that juddering or that warped feeling that we're trying to avoid. From there, it seems like there's been a couple different recommendations to either go then up to 60 miles an hour down to 10 miles an hour, doing the same thing about 4 times, Or I've also seen people say go to 35 miles an hour down to, 5 miles an hour, doing the same thing. I'm probably going to get up to, 40, 45 miles an hour, come down to 5 miles per hour 4 to 6 times, and then do the 60 miles an hour down to 10 miles an hour 4 to 6 times. And then from there, you want to drive around, trying to not use the brake as much as possible and give it some time, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it would be, to naturally kind of cool down by itself. You want them just to kind of come down naturally. It's almost like seasoning cast iron. You're seasoning your rotors with that pad material so that it's got a nice surface that it's kind of building off of, and they're mated together for the lifetime of their pairing. I'm going to get in the truck, get it pulled out of here, and we're going to take it for a spin. Well, I thought I was going to pull it out, but getting in, firing the truck up, I can definitely tell that the brakes still have some air in the line, so I'm going to have to just kind of go through the process and keep bleeding them, because that's probably not safe to have out on the roads. I'm having to pump it pretty good to get any real good brake pressure, so that's not super great. I definitely have brake fluid coming out of this caliper. Let's go ahead and get some light on the situation and take a look. So yeah, I mean, you can see there's brake fluid all over that. I gotta figure out exactly where it's coming from, but my gut tells me it's the Banjo bolt right there. So let's take a look. Let's get this cleaned up a little bit and see if I can make this safe. All right, guys. Well, basically, it's been about a week since I went to go pull the truck out of the garage, and one of the Banjo bolts was kind of not tightened down enough and just kind of leaked fluid everywhere. And upon looking into it, I realized that the Banjo bolts that I bought on Amazon, thinking they were the right ones, were actually aluminum. And basically what happened is I got it out of the garage, and upon trying to snug these down and get them torqued to the right spec, I busted my driver's side Banjo bolt head clean off. Obviously, fluid started pouring out of there everywhere. So yeah, these were not the right material. I definitely needed to go with a steel Banjo bolt. Well, with doing this brake upgrade, I didn't source all of the parts completely from one location. I kind of put all the components together, braided steel brake lines from one place, back brake line from another place. I bought the Banjo bolts online. I bought all the calipers and everything and had those machined by my buddy. And I should have just went through my buddy, who is actually the_Yoda_guy on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel you can go check out. He has the contact to get the calipers machine down that 5/30 seconds, and he sells all the components and they all work together for him. But since I bought them separately, I ended up getting the wrong Banjo bolt. Upon starting to search for this Banjo bolt locally and even online, I found out that it is somewhat of a freaking unicorn. A shorty little Banjo bolt, but I could not find it. It's a pretty specialized piece. So I reached out to the Yoda guy and got his recommendation, and he says he uses these little guys from Chase Bay. And I'll throw a link in the description section of the email of this bolt, because this is what I recommend you get. Probably going to take you like 4 days to get it. That was super fast. It was faster than they said it was going to be originally. Right now I'm going to go out to the truck, pop off those temporary Banjo bolts, put in these guys, get it torqued down. I've seen anywhere torque specs from like 14 foot-pounds to 22 foot-pounds. Probably going to start at 14 and see how that feels. That's not very tight, but at the end of it all, I'm going to definitely mark all of my components with a paint pen so that I can drive it around for a little bit and just keep a good eye on the whole system to make sure none of my bolts are backing out on me, over the next couple of days, to the next week, to the next couple of months. I'm sure this is going to be something that I'm going to be constantly checking just to make sure I didn't do anything wrong. Like I said before, don't take on this job unless you feel like you have the skills to safely complete it. Let's go ahead and jump outside, get these seated down, and then I'll probably ask my wife to help me pump this brake system a little bit more. Much better. All right, we finished pumping the brakes. I got the truck warming up right now. Feel pretty good about the pedal pressure I have right now. Probably won't know until I really get on the road a little bit more. I've got the brake reservoir under the hood filled up and capped off. Went back around, made sure all of my brake lines were tight. Got my brake lines and bolts associated with it all marked with a paint pen so I know if they're, loosening up on me. All right, so now we're gonna jump in the truck. We're gonna get out on the road, make sure the brake system feels right, trying not to brake very heavily. And what I'm gonna do is get it up to 35 miles an hour and apply firm, quick pressure all the way down to 5 miles an hour without fully coming to a stop to not let the brakes sit on that hot rotor. And I'm gonna do that probably about 6 times. From there, I'm going to take it up to 60 miles an hour and do the same thing, firmly but quickly, coming down to 10 miles an hour without coming to a full stop. And I'm probably going to do that probably 4 times. And hopefully by the end of that, I will have a nice even layer of brake pad adhered to the rotors, and I'm going to drive around for about 15 minutes trying not to come to a full stop, and if I need to come to a full stop, putting it in neutral and using the e-brake to come to a full stop or something like that, because what you don't want again is that pad sitting on the hot rotor and depositing too much of that brake pad in one location. That's what can cause warping and the jittering of your brakes. Let's go ahead and get in the truck and give this a shot. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to get it up to about 35 right there and just put on the brakes down to 5. I'm going to do that again. Put the brakes down to about 5. Do that again. To about 5. Go again. Not coming to a full stop whatsoever. Okay, 35, about 5. So far, I'm going to jinx myself, but I got no one on the road behind me, and then down quickly to 5 without coming to a full stop. All right. Don't know how many times that was. It's probably about 6. Okay, so I'm going to wait for a straightaway here. Get up to about 60. Come to a quick braking, constant pressure down to 10. Back up to 60. And then down, constant pressure, down to 10. Up to 60. And then constant pressure, even, down to 10. I think that was 3 times. I'm going to do it 2 more. Constant pressure, down to 10. And constant pressure, down to 10. I'm going to do it 1 more. 60 on this. Down to 10. All right. I think that's good. So I am going to go ahead and drive around for like 15 minutes. Just going to let these things come back down to a good temperature and call it good. That's all it should really take. All right, just got home. Brakes are doing okay. I still think I need to bleed them. They're just a little spongy. Go ahead and jump under the hood really quick and take a look at the brake level, or rather at the brake fluid level, to make sure it has not gone down. Don't think it has. For any new leaking, pretty damn dry to me. So I'm gonna get the garage cleaned up a little bit and pull the truck in here and then ask my lovely wife to help me bleed the brakes again. A little bit of that push, push, hold. So I'll give you guys a full rundown on what I think about the brakes after that. All right, well, I'm gonna go take this truck for another test drive today. I took it for a test drive yesterday in the snow, and there's still snow on the ground today, but I think I'll be able to get a little bit more distance for stopping to judge the stopping power of this thing. Real big bummer, unfortunately, that this truck has been out of commission with the snow we just got. Definitely would have loved to get out there and tear around in the snow a little bit more, maybe make a mountain trip, but sadly didn't want to do too much with all the snow and the unknowns of the brakes. Of course, there's someone behind me now, so let's outrun him a little bit. Okay. Stretch going 60. Pretty good. Definitely. Yeah, that's pretty good. Get up to about 60 here. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's probably like 30, 40 feet. Something like that. All right. Let's get up to 55. Yeah, that's good. It locks up the brakes for sure. Yeah, overall, I am super happy with that. If I gently apply the brakes, I'm not getting wobbling, which is freaking awesome. That's really what I wanted to get rid of. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down a little hill I live by, and literally it is freaking night and day compared to what it was with the old brakes and rotors. God, just the slightest applying of the brake, it would go the whole way. And it just makes it, you know, a nightmare to take on trips. So going back down the hill on the steeper side, lightly applying the brake, it's perfect. I love it. So much better. All right, we're gonna get this thing home, pull it in the garage a little bit, and I'm gonna climb under and show you guys kind of an unfortunate little circumstance that's happening to me. We'll wait to get to that until we get into the garage. All right, so we're back in the shop now, and probably should have shown you guys this before. It was covered in road slush and ice and all that, but I run a Fox 2.5-inch coilover up front. In the first-gen Tundras and Sequoias page, it's kind of a little bit of a known issue that upon full droop and lock to one side or the other, the edge down here, even on the OEM Tundra calipers, comes in contact or can come in contact with the brake lines. I was having that happen just a very, very minute amount before, enough to where I was keeping an eye on it. And now with the addition of the extended brake lines and the Banjo bolt style fitting right there, it is getting significant contact right there. Actually, a little more on that side I will show you, or at least it's caused a little bit more damage to the Banjo bolt. My Banjo bolt woes will never end. So that's something that I feel is like a fairly common upgrade with a lot of off-road vehicles. They do the extended brake lines, they do the upper control arms, they do, you know, some sort of suspension upgrade with their coilovers to get more travel and everything like that. So unfortunately, I am coming in contact with the bottom coilover seat, just too much for it to be safe. So looking around online and talking to a couple of people that I've made contact with throughout the Tundra community, they've had experiences and they've reached out to Fox, and this is something that's a known issue. What the fix actually entails is swapping out this lower coilover seat from what I believe is an 05 Tacoma version of their coilovers, and it is taller and tapers out, or rather in, from the top here more down to the bottom. So it's quite a bit taller, and it should get the Banjo bolt, or rather the coilover, clearanced enough so it won't come in contact with the Banjo bolt at full lock and droop. So really quickly, get it in here. It's not touching, but you can see that, you know, basically real close. Unfortunate that I'm having this issue. I need to get it fixed before I go back out on the trail. I need to get it addressed, and I need to make sure that my coilovers are not coming in contact with my Banjo bolts in any way, shape, or form before I really feel comfortable. Now, personally, with my experience so far and just doing the research I've done on this situation, I don't believe this has been caused by the Lexus GX460 caliper upgrade. I know quite a few people who have had the issue with just standard brakes, calipers, even hard lines. When they went to switch to the extended brake lines, that kind of exacerbated the situation. So I am really hoping that the fix will solve the problem, but unfortunately you guys probably won't know that for at least another week to week and a half. I need to talk to Fox, get the part shipped up as soon as possible, and then I'm going to need to put it on the rig. I will say that in the first-gen Tundra and Sequoia community that I'm a part of, I know of people pretty close to me that are running this exact Lexus GX460 brake upgrade and King shocks and not getting any contact between the shock and the Banjo bolt there, as well as ADS shocks and not getting any contact with the Banjo bolt there. So I think it's more so common with the Foxes right now, and it's good that there's a fix. I did actually hear from one guy who recently ordered the shock coilovers from Fox, and it came with the 05 Tacoma spring seat already on it from the factory, so that tells me that they're making the change. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, so that if you are going to order some of the shock 2.5-inch coilovers up front, that you order them and make sure you order them with the 2005 Tacoma spring seats at the base. And if you've already got Fox 2.5-inch coilovers, just make sure that you're keeping an eye on that. I have heard about a couple of guys, like I said, that have had contact between even their standard OEM hard lines. I'll have to let you guys know in a future video once I change out the coilover spring seat if that solved the problem and any additional updates on that. All right, so to finish and sum it up on this Lexus GX460 brake upgrade, so far I'm liking it. I'm getting a little bit of squishy pedal, and it could just be in my mind because, you know, it's really hard to judge, but I feel like I'm getting a slight bit of a squishy pedal when I first initially put the brakes in, and then when I pump it that second time, it really wants to grab. So that could be in my mind, and I'm leaning towards going and getting this thing professionally bled at a brake shop just so I know 100% that there is no air in the lines causing that. But honestly, that could be in my head, and all in all, this thing locks up pretty damn good. As far as the install on the Lexus GX460s, it really was a piece of cake. Overall, the install process was pretty seamless and pretty straightforward. The only thing you're going to want to probably really make sure of is that when you do install these new lines, that the dust shield, if it needs to be bent back a little bit just to clear the bigger rotors, that you do so, but that's really easy to do. The brakes themselves that I got from R1 Concepts, the calipers, the rotors, the brake pads, all super nice quality. I paid for them myself. They offered great customer service and helped me along the way every step of the way, so I can't say enough good things about R1 Concepts. From what I can tell, I am getting a lot more stopping power. I don't know if I would have gotten drastically more stopping power over the OEM, but from what I'm hearing from other people, they are. I think that the rotors being an additional inch tall and inch wide only goes to improve your stopping power. The pistons and the caliper being bigger are definitely an upgrade as well. And overall, being that this truck is just so much heavier than it was stock with all the bumpers and camper and camping gear and all that, I feel a lot better just having bigger, beefier components on the truck just in general. The extended brake lines that I bought, which I believe I bought from Wheelers Off-Road and Marlin Crawler, great. They did exactly what I needed them to do. I'll link down in the description section below all the stuff. You can also jump over to the first video in this two-part series to check out the install process of the brakes and everything like that. Moving on to the vacuum bleeder and the bleeding of the brakes themselves. The vacuum bleeder I had, although it did pull probably most of the air out of the system, being that it leaked so much around the threads of the bleeder valve itself, I just don't think I'd really endorse the product. Honestly, what I've found after doing this job myself is probably the old pump hold method along with the gravity feed method is the way that I'm gonna go in the future. I think I'm just gonna, ask for the help of my wife or somebody to come in and help me bleed the brakes the old-fashioned way. Overall, I'm super happy with getting a full refresh done on my brakes, being able to mark all my bolts with a paint pen, and kind of give me just a good baseline for how my system's supposed to operate. I will stress again that brakes are life or death, so if you guys decide to take on a brake job like this or something similar, just make sure that you are confident in your own skills to get it done. And if at any point during the process you get stumped and need to bring in a professional, do so. Hey, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Throw them in the comment section below. I love interacting with you guys, starting to build out this community a little bit bigger and better, and hopefully reaching 1,000 subscribers by next month. That'll be pretty cool. If you want to link to any of the products I used in this video, I will also throw them down in the description section below. If you want to follow me on other platforms, definitely hit me up over on Instagram. I'm at Evergreen Overland. I'm hoping to start posting there a little bit more on the daily grind and maybe a little bit of the videos or product videos or modification videos that might be coming in the future. If you liked the video, please hit that like button to let me know I've done a good job. Hit the subscribe button to be notified when I put out a video each week. Other than that, get out there, use some of your gear, work on your truck. Thanks for watching.